Yeah, hello all. Let's start. So let us ask ourselves what could possibly go wrong if you're using Qt Quick. But first of all, some words to myself. So you see that the entire talk will be a bit more put to the fun side. So as I was introduced, my name is Jeremias Bosch. I'm working for roughly 10 and a half years for a company called basysKom. We are around the Qt ecosystem since 2004, providing software services for customers. So I'm a senior developing project manager, which means I'm doing Qt Quick, C++, also on the IT and Azure cloud stuff, but also project management and team management. So let's get started. So every good story actually needs a hero, and here he is. The story is no difference, has no difference to it, and we call him the developer. And the story itself actually starts in the year 2011. It's somewhere, in the mobile sea, and it's a cold morning, and Stephen Elop, from CEO of Nokia, sent out his famous letter of a burning platform. And yeah, our developer was just in the middle of this burning platform and looking around and wondering actually what he should do about it. Here the story actually begins. And he's looking around to new places where he can actually go to and drive to and grow a cute garden. But he's super quick. He looks around and he finds that he has a boat and just can sail through the mobile sea here and seeing people go home and moving forward. And he finally lands on the embedded island. So settles there, and he has a wild ride behind him. And so he finds there the embedded natives. They ask him, what is all the smoke in the horizon, and what is this with Nokia going on there, and on all these mobile platform talk. And so he told them what he had done in the past. He told them about Qt and Qt Quick, and they were really impressed because it was actually what they were looking for. They want to have UIs and HMIs that are more colorful, they're more powerful, touchable, shiny. And so they gave him a patch of land and welcomed him. And years passed by. So he actually grew a garden there. And but then the time comes when he decided to leave. He wanted to see something new. And finally, the embedded natives, they asked him, okay, what is the most overused requirement you find in a QML project? And you probably, everyone in this room who's implementing with Qt and Qt Quick know that. Make it work like on my phone. So that's a requirement you always get. It should exactly like on my phone. And seriously, if you hear that, it means that you're in trouble, because what it actually tells you that the UX or the product manager has no freaking idea what he's asking for. He only knows the most common use cases. All the special cases are mostly unknown. Well, except you probably build a phone. And so one example is I had personally, make the Wi-Fi work like on my phone. And I go in this menu and I click this button and I'm online. And then he didn't actually think about what's happening if the password isn't right, if the password changes and all that kind of stuff. And you have to tell them. That's the only way to do it. You have to communicate to your customer what he's really wishing for and what the price tag below it in time and money and so on and so forth. So first rule, communication rules. It's really important. Nevertheless, our developer wants to have more specification, so he goes north to the automotive plane, where the specification is actually probably invented. And he ended up at the city of the Tier 1. And far in the north, you have seen the OEM mountains. And well, but first of all, he's in a tier 1 city. And there's the wall of specification. And so our hero was living his dream. So everything was specified. There was no question that cannot be answered by some specification somewhere. And yeah, he was really happy. So again, but you know, there was a hiccup in all this kind of stuff because there was no specification for the HMI, not really. So he asked around, and the only thing he actually found was a style guide. And so we had to follow him to a project. But you know, in the meanwhile, meanwhile in the OEM mountains, well, there's the king in the castle, and he demanded an end of this really unspecified madness. And he told his chief pilot to find a solution. So he actually, there is the king, and there is the DSC, so it's a design to specification converter. How it works, you put 50 designers in it, and you speak your wish, and the specification comes out. And and yeah, he told him, I have a solution, and the king, of course, asked he should be more specific, and then he explained it. So you generate the QML from Photoshop. So I know there's the design studio, so but the entire project that's based on was like 5 years ago, roughly, so it wasn't there yet. Anyway, you generate the QML from the Photoshop. You make the QML clickable, and of course, because the OEM cannot demand the tier 1 what technology to use, and they want to have something more robust. So they convert the QML in the end into XML to get rid of all the logic, because the logic is already written in paper specification. And you know, and yeah, the king was really excited. So he said, it was a great idea, and let's push it down in the sea of speculation and down the waterfall, and that's what they did. So they basically delivered hundreds of screens, 500, 600 screens in XML. They removed all the logic they did in their prototype, and yeah, all this stuff and all this specification ended up at the OEM, the tier 1, and they were super happy about it, because now they had all these boxes they can divide to their teams worldwide. And it was a total fit. They were really happy. And they actually created an XML to QML converter again. So remember, they created in QML, converted to XML, and then again converted to QML. I mean, what could possibly go wrong, right? Years passed by, so really years. So there were dozens of people, and they were working regionally air-gapped. Hope you get the point. So they're building dozens of applications, and every application had its own QML engine. So there were like 30, 40 applications on one device. And they had only a couple of weeks left before they had to show something working to the customer. And then they put it to the target and pushed the target into the river. And well, didn't really work out. So at the V-gate, they actually met with, they wanted to show the customer, and the ship just blew away and it sank. And they were like, all, what happened? It was all specified, and how could this actually happen with specification? So, but they remembered our developer, who was still around at this time, and they called him, and he jumped in, and well, he looked at it, and he had an answer. So what happened? Well, the QMLs were totally overloaded. So every button, just an example, it was even worse examples, loaded 5 images for every state, even if the button never reached that state at all in a specific case. Every button had a huge tree of objects below it, like 2, 3 mouse areas, because you probably need them. a lot of stuff. There were screens that actually had 1,000 buttons on it, and were only 2 visible at a time. And why did this happen? Because the designers, they had only the option to toggle the visibility of the items. And they had this one screen where they have different, situations. They have wanted to display 1,000 in total. And so it was in the XML, and they just converted it. And then on average, so there were screens with even more than 50,000 Q objects created if you loaded them. And then they wanted that it's slow and taking a lot of memory. So again, it wasn't the designer's fault. It wasn't their job to make it run on the target. It was their job to make it run on their target hardware, which was an 8-core, 32 gigabytes, so it was or 4-core, 32 gigabyte RAM with a decent graphic card at this time, and it was even there running with only 25 frames per second. But that was the one thing. And the other thing was due to this really distributed setup, and the developers were not using one code system. They were having, every team had their own, did not even use Git. So they were not sharing their code. And only the management area was, the management talked to each other. And so everyone needed to work. So everyone actually had its own QML engine, always. And even the applications that didn't have any QML were starting a QML engine because it was in the rulebook to use this kind of base code. What can everyone learn from this? One thing you see in a lot of projects is that the actual, sorry, I'm just one page too far. So everything you put in your QML file, and I think it was in the talk before also, you pay for. So every single line of code you have there, you're paying for. It's no matter if it's visible or not. So keep that in mind. Invisible doesn't mean that it doesn't, eat your memory. And one other thing is that textures, having large images on your buttons, which only have one color on it, don't do it. I mean, there are people or designers who think that's the best solution, but definitely it's not. So if you have only flat images, using either 1 by 1 pixel textures, or don't use textures at all and just color the rectangle as it is. So again, so what else can we learn? Don't let your team setup dictate your architecture. That's something you see in a lot of projects, that the team setup and the entire structure of your company leaks into the architecture of your application. So if you look at the architecture of your application, you will have a decent match to your company structure. Put it the other way around, think about a decent architecture for your project and then decide how to set up the team for that. And please never let your designers create your production code. That's what happened in the one project. Or give them training. So we offer training, so that was the advertising part for everyone, even for designers. We try our best to get them started. So of course the developer got fixed it in a fast way. So it only 6 weeks left to just get it started. And just to put some numbers on the screen here. The project was coming from 5 to 10 seconds loading time for every single screen. And it was a 400 to 800 pixel screen, right? And you had a quad core with 4 gigabytes memory. And the expectation was 200 milliseconds loading time. And for the second load, only 100 milliseconds on a dual core with 1 gigabyte. So, and of course, what we actually figured out during the implementation, that they forgot about 2 more resolutions, and the translation didn't thought about translating the thing at all at first. How do you fix such a situation? Well, first identify the most heavy screens, of course. Then we created low weight custom controls. So remember, it was a time where no Qt quick controls 2 were available. The approach we choose was a little bit in the same direction there. And then we started to rebuild every screen by hand. First the most heavy ones, and then, well, of course, the ones that are not that important or not that heavy. But one thing, we had to always stay compatible to the generated screens, because the OEM at this point in time didn't know about all these actions. So they didn't really care, but they would have been a little bit, well, maybe a complicated situation if they would have known that we are, well, the tier 1 is actually doing this. Yeah, and one very important thing, the designer's input is the vision they had. You have to match this vision. It doesn't tell you exactly how you have to implement it. Yeah, as I already said, there were, well, nice findings, like 2 more resolutions, or full HD resolution, for example, a different aspect ratio. Everything was hard-coded in X and Y and width and height, which didn't really help to the resolution part. It wasn't responsive at all, no responsive design, no layouts. Yeah, and as I said, they forgot about translations. In the end, once all was done, it was fulfilling all the KPIs. Even the most complex screens were matching the expectation. And the generated code wasn't actually able to boot on a quad-core 4 GB. There were more to it because, well, it's not only fixing the code, but also fixing the mindset of the people who caused the code in the first place. Which means we rethought and helped them to rethought their development process, going more agile, having continuous integration, which they didn't had before, going fast to target, having simulation, always put everything together. We decided to color textures by shaders, and there were a lot more things to fix. So our hero was a little bit unhappy about the entire specification part. So in his mind, it worked differently. So he actually left or decided to leave the automotive plane. So something's wrong here. And he got to the App Nation. So it's really close to the mobile sea. So, and of course, there's the City of Shadow. And he heard a lot of good things about it. So he entered it. And, well, the first thing, they put him into a jungle. So it's in the middle of the city, you know. And the light is never shining there. And the only thing they give him in his way is an old thing from Indiana Jones. So this kind of expectation, or the expectation of the people living in the city, was to bring light into this jungle of QML. And that's what the QML files actually looked like. And yeah, guess what monsters did he find? This guy. It's something you see in code, and it used to work when you code it, but after one sprint or one day, it doesn't, and nobody knows why. And then you have this guy. In the talk before, it was the same thing. Actually, I heard in QML 3, it will be removed, these options. I think it was in a parallel talk. But anyway, the problem here is that you have an object and it's actually using property which is outside of its own context. And I see people a lot doing this, and it will put you down to the structure. And as soon as you move my object somewhere else, there might be another external property and it's doing something totally different. And that's really bad. So again, so what's the issue? You break a structure by doing this. You introduce feature bugs, and they're hard to find. You demodularize your application base. So you start to give up the modules. And as soon as you start to refactoring, it will definitely break your neck. And especially the parent part, it probably don't even create bugs, visible bugs in the console. That stuff is not there. It just behaves weird. And it's totally impossible to find that. But when does this kind of stuff get introduced? Always during release time. So you have to work around some issue and then you hack it in and everyone is happy. Workarounds, as we all know, they stay forever. And because they always have a very good reason and a very good argumentation why they are really important. And at some point, people cannot remember and they have fear to remove it because they don't know what it will break. So how can you avoid that? You can, avoid it by code reviews. So it's a more, people looking at it and starting to scream. And don't let you push it to master. And if you have this, you have to invest the time to refactor it. And you can avoid it only by defining APIs and rules. And if you don't, well, welcome. So first rule, do code reviews. Second rule, APIs rules. And the third rule is, do constant refactoring of your code. It's the lesson we learned a hard way, and I can just recommend it. Do it on a daily basis. So, pretty close to the end, also of my time. Yeah, years passed by. The developer, I had a bit more slides, but it didn't fit the time. So years passed by. Developer still wanders this wonderful world of Qt. He meets great people. And he still brings light into jungles and cuts down object trees, which should not be there, and ships down the river of productions. And but he will never forget all this awesome story actually started 10 years ago with a burning platform. And we're all looking forward to Qt 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremias, and for the good presentation. Are there any questions? No questions?
Totally flash.
Wow, you explained everything in much detail. So then we finish this presentation. Many thanks, and move on to the next presentation here. Thank you.